Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Off the Monster. I am Robert Taylor. I am here with Derek Stats Masterson McGuire, Mr. Jeffrey Brown, and in spirit, Jeremy, the overweight underdog, Harfinger. But tonight, in a series of awesome guests, we have the one and only Chris Cotillo from MassLive.com. Chris, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so very much for coming on.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Appreciate you having me anytime.
Absolutely, dude. We could not be more ecstatic to speak to you. As I was saying just before we came on recording, that I've been following your content now for the better part of right around almost a year, if not a little bit over. Super engaged with it. Love what you do, and we appreciate you coming on to talk to us here for a little while. One of the things that we like to do is we like to keep it loose on this podcast. We're just typically it's four of us, but one of our guys, Jeremy, is being held hostage in his basement somewhere in upstate Illinois. He couldn't make it tonight. If you ever watch any of our podcast material, man, do me a favor. Send your thoughts and prayers, because when you see him on our podcast, it looks like he's being held captive by ISIS wherever he records. We're not 100% sure. I've offered several times to come rescue him. He keeps telling us no, but I think that he is being held against his will. But what we'll do, Mr. Chris, is I'm going to turn it over to Derek Stats McGuire, and we'll kind of go from here, man.
All right, yeah, I'll take this kind of underway because we did see, just before you hopped on, you posted your article on Adalberto Mondesi, and we actually have a question on him. So first thing with Mondesi, obviously the Red Sox traded Josh Taylor for him. What is his timeline around, and how does that potentially affect playing time for other guys like Christian Arroyo potentially getting to play every single day instead of just against one pitching arm or whoever else it might be?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that they haven't ruled out Mondesi for opening day yet. I think it's possible that he's going to be, on the shelf to start. I would guess more likely than not, he's on the IL to start the season, along with, probably some of the other guys that have gotten banged up in camp. But, they knew this heading in when they acquired him. They're not at all surprised by the fact that he is, not fully ready. He had ACL surgery. I think in early May of last year, they said 9 to 12 month recovery period at that point. Now he's kind of getting to the end of that. I'm not down in Fort Myers right now, but my guess is that, he should be getting into game action in the next few days. He seems to be taking BP. He's taking ground balls on the field, all that type of stuff. So, with this guy, I think the Red Sox are really excited to tap into, some potential that has not, he hasn't lived up to his potential as a player in terms of tools and all that stuff. So, he, to me, is a guy that, they're happy to take a flyer on. Obviously, they thought Josh Taylor was a reasonable acquisition cost, and now they're going to see if they can reap the benefits of a guy that really has been hurt for his whole career, but still has the tools. And, he thinks his speed will be back. I think that's going to be a big part of his game. And, I think that they want to protect Kike Hernandez and Christian Arroyo, two injury-prone guys who they're asking a lot out of. I think Yu Chang's going to see some of that playing time earlier in the year, and then when Mondesi's ready, he'll take over, and you'll see a lot of him, especially as a guy who can hit lefty and play those up the middle positions. So they're excited about him defensively. They're excited about the speed, and this is not a surprise that he's not 100%. They knew that going into the trade.
Yeah, it feels like that's something we've been hearing for the most part. So that's good to know, no setbacks or anything, because he seemingly, like you said, he could be a big piece for this team, and there is a lot of potential there. You did kind of touch on a little bit the fact that he can hit lefty. Is there any indication from either Alex Cora or people in the Red Sox organization about there maybe being too many lefties in this lineup? You look up and down the lineup with Verdugo, Devers, Yoshida, Cassis, and Reese McGuire already kind of seemingly being five lefties in the lineup. Is there a feeling that maybe there's too many lefties? They want to play, do they want to play the lefty righty game all the way through the lineup? How do they feel about that organizationally? Is there any kind of feeling on that situation?
I feel like they think they can hit lefties. I think they think Verdugo can do it. He's a guy that's kind of had pretty much equal splits throughout his career. Obviously, Devers is going to mash anybody. They think that some of these guys are capable of doing it. I mean, there are impact right-handers. I think the big three, and and Kike, Turner, and Duvall in whatever order they're in. So, I think the top of the lineup, and then they are going to have these kind of platoon type guys, or these guys that, are going to get a chance. Mondesi from both sides, obviously. Arroyo's a right-hander, Alfaro or Wong, whoever ends up, playing the bulk of games against, left-handed starters behind the plate. So, I feel like they think they are, covered. Obviously, there's some days where it's going to skew a little bit lefty, but I think they have their focus. I think more than lefty righty or any of that stuff. The focus with this lineup was getting on base, and they think they have guys that can do that, right? From Turner to Casas to whoever. That's really the focus for a team that hasn't done that as much as they would have wanted the last few years.
Yeah, I know. I do want to ask you on a guy who's seemingly had a very good spring training. He's playing with Mexico now in the WBC. Mr. Brown's been talking about him here because I know Mr. Brown's very high on him. Jarren Duran and how he's kind of potentially fitting into the picture. I know there's been some talk of, like, again, there was it last year of, do you play him in AAA, give him every day at bat, so you maybe consider him on the MLB roster? I know Raimel Tapia is also having a good spring. Both of them are lefties, and like I said, you said that probably aren't worried about the lefties. They still feel they can hit lefties. But when it comes to carrying lefties, and you already have a guy like Rob Brefsnyder, who's an outfielder who hits lefties very well, how does that affect their situation of making the opening day roster?
I feel like Dahlbeck and Duran are kind of in the same situation where, these are guys who have been in the majors before. We've seen them play. They're kind of high pedigree guys. They're a big prospect with a lot of hype. And, Dahlbeck especially had success early on in the big leagues, hitting all those homers, and then a pretty good second half in 21. Duran, I think it's been bumpier, as everybody can attest to. But, I think with both of those guys have minor league options. It's not a guy you have to make a decision on, right now. I remember back in 2019, a lot of talk about, can they carry Blake Swihart? He's out of options. What are they going to do? Can they carry him? Can't they? They're going to have to DFA him. That doesn't come into play, with these battles we're talking about. So, if they don't want Dahlbeck on the opening day roster, they can send him to AAA and carry somebody like, say Alfaro or whatever. I know there's a lot of, injury stuff with Wong and Turner that plays into that. With Tapia, I think kind of a cleaner comp. They might lose Tapia if they don't carry him on opening day. They're not going to lose Duran, and they can just send him down. So, in that regard, I think that, the way these guys have been described to me, they're not burning a hole in the pocket of the Red Sox. And in that regard, I think, they're probably, going to carry these guys for as long as they can.
Yeah, I know Mr. Brown has a couple questions. I'll ask you. I'll hand it over to him in half a second. Does Tapia have an upward mobility clause, or does he have an opt-out for after spring training?
Yeah, I think Tapia is an opt-out straight up, and then Alfaro is an upward mobility clause. So those things are different in that Alfaro can only leave if a team is willing to offer him a major league job. I get the feeling with Connor Wong, behind that's probably not even going to be much of a factor. I think Alfaro probably just makes the team at this point because he's the healthy right-handed catcher. He's obviously, before he left for the WBC, he tore it up and all that. So I think that he's probably going to be the guy that, makes the team. With Tapia, obviously, we wrote a story the other day about how he's the MVP of spring training for the Red Sox so far. And he's making a case. His is clean opt-out. So that means that if he is on March 25th, if he's not added to the roster, he can just opt out, sign with any team, no matter what, minor league deal, major league deal. So my guess is the Red Sox probably want to avoid that, and they'll put him on the roster. And like I said, it's easy for them to just say, hey, Duran, you're going to AAA. Not great for the player, but just builds depth for the team, and that's what they're looking to do.
So, Chris, coming out of the WBC, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on the WBC, but you always hear a championship team say, coming out of spring training, we knew we had a lot of chemistry coming up with this team to have that championship caliber team. With the lag that a lot of these teams are going to have coming out of the WBC, maybe the chemistry is not there. Where do you see the Red Sox landing? And the reason I ask that is there have been veterans on this team in prior years, but I think this year more than not, since maybe 2018, there are veterans that could mentor the Duran, Bobby D. So where do you see the effects of the WBC playing out in the Major League Baseball season? What are your thoughts on the MLBC or the WBC?
My guess is, I think that the leadership and the chemistry thing has honestly been an overdone storyline so far in spring training, just because, it naturally with the changing of guard like they had, when you have Bogarts and Evaldi and Rich Hill and Waka and Martinez and Vasquez and all these guys, Plawecki, who hadn't been there as long, but you get catch the drift of all these guys who have been there for a long time. or had, meaningful roles in the clubhouse. When those guys leave, it's all people just want to fill the void kind of immediately. And to me, I think that happens more organically, right? I think Kike Hernandez has emerged as the guy who wants to be the leader. Justin Turner, a guy they brought in to potentially be in more of a leadership role. Does that mean they are going to do that? We'll see. I think it's going to be something that develops, throughout the year, obviously throughout the rest of camp with who's there, who's not, and throughout the season. So, these things kind of have a way of, figuring themselves out. I do think this thing about the clubhouse and lack of chemistry and all that stuff. And I know I was the one that wrote the Costa sunbathing story, so maybe I played into it a little bit, but, I think that whole thing's overblown. You had guys like Bogarts and Hill and Evaldi and all those types of guys that were really such an important part of it last year. And, nobody who is around the team has any bad things to say about those guys. It's just going to be different now. Bogarts, not a rah-rah guy. JD Martinez, not a rah-rah guy. Evaldi, same thing. Kike Hernandez is loud. He's kind of instituting himself as the leader of this team. We all heard that kind of question that Duke Castiglione asked to Chaim Bloom on the first or second day of spring training. Does he have the resume to do this? I bet that's a question that people in the clubhouse are asking too. So chemistry is not something that comes together the first week of camp or even really fully by the end of camp. There's just, for these guys, I think there's so many new faces. Half of the guys in camp with the Red Sox have never been with the team in Major League camp before. I think it was like 35 out of 65. So that's something that's going to develop, organically, but they do have proven winners. There's a lot of talk about the Red Sox only having 3 guys who are on the 18 World Series team, Frazier, Sale, and Devers. Well, there's a lot of guys outside of that group who have won a lot, right? Turner won a World Series. Jansen, same thing on that LA team. Kike, Adam Duvall, and guys like Kluber and Paxton and all these types of guys. Chris Martin that are late 30s and been through it all. So I think it'll come together organically. It'll be interesting to see how that happens, and it's one of those things that even as reporters in there and getting that quick sense and that quick hour we get in there every day, it's not something we always see how it comes together. And sometimes, you learn that a guy is a leader. I didn't think Kevin Plawecki was one of the leaders of the Red Sox until, late last year when it kind of turned out he ended up being that way. So, some of that stuff happens in the shadows. I don't think it'll be a concern. And I also, this whole thing about vibes and chemistry, I guess, it's good, but what are they going to say? We all hate each other, So I always kind of take that with a grain of salt this time of year too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we like to call ourselves a vibes group, so we're hoping that the vibes are good for the Red Sox. But winning does always help that. So hopefully that means they get off to a good start. Winning will fix everything if there is any problems. Hopefully that'll get stuff out of the way. We look at this Red Sox team, obviously, and there are a lot of question marks, especially health-wise, and there's already been some injuries, especially in the starting rotation with Whitlock still rehabbing or coming back from his injury last year, and Bayo with the forearm tightness, and now Paxton. So it's getting more and more likely that this kind of minor league depth, I guess, that they've been building up with Cutter Crawford and Josh Winkowski. Maybe it's not fair to call them minor league depth because they pitched in the big leagues last year, but also 2 guys like Brian Mata and Brandon Walter and Chris Murphy, how they've all performed well in spring training. What are the chances that any of these guys maybe break the big league roster for opening day, even in a bullpen spot, almost like Cutter Crawford did last year? Because when I look at it, I see like that could be a possibility that those guys break the opening day roster in the bullpen. Maybe a guy like a Cutter Crawford.
I think Cutter Crawford is part of the opening day rotation right now, and I'm assuming that Bayo and Whitlock and Paxton are all not ready for that first time around. I think with guys like that, as intriguing as it is to put some of those arms in the bullpen, the Red Sox have such a history of doing that and it biting them. Whether it be Matt Barnes, was one of their top rotation prospects. They put him in relief, and he's had a good career as a reliever, but you'd rather have a guy be a starter long term. That's why they want Whitlock to be in the rotation, because he's electric, and they want him to pitch the most amount of innings and have the most amount of impact moving forward. I think in a perfect world they do the same with Houck. And, in a perfect world, they have no interest in moving Bayo to the bullpen. I think they'll probably try to keep those guys as starters just because it's so much more valuable long term. So, we saw last year, right? I mean, throughout the summer, we saw so many guys get hurt on that team to the point where, they were calling up, the stretch where I think they had, 4 rookie starters in a row, Bayo, Winkowski, Crawford, and Seabold, who's no longer with the team. And, this year, the depth guys are going to be guys with more major league experience. I think they're excited about that. I think they think they're like 10 or 11 deep in the rotation. That includes, Mata, Murphy, Walter behind Crawford and Winkowski, and that's behind the 7 kind of major league guys they have. So I feel like they feel really comfortable in that regard. I don't think they're in a rush to really make any of those guys relievers. And they also have some intriguing arms that are traditional bullpen guys that could crack the team, whether that be Kelly or Wyatt Mills or some of those guys, maybe a non-roster invitee surprises them. So I think they'll feel comfortable with it, and I feel like it's going to be tested early, right? I mean, I don't think Whitlock, Bayo, or Paxton are going to be out, past April 15th or anything like that, but that's still 2 weeks that you have to cover until you'll see some of those guys then.
Yeah, hold on, I just lost my question. I lost my train of thought for half a second. Mr. Taylor, do you have a question you want to ask on the Red Sox needing a big star? I want to let you ask this because I don't know how you want to word it necessarily.
Did we lose Chris, or is he still there? Can you hear us, Chris?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
All right.
We lost
I thought we lost you there for a second. So to kind of touch on the point that you touched on earlier about Kike having the resume to lead the club. One of the articles that I read today on the Boston Globe website was they were talking about all of the players that the Red Sox have lost since the 2018 team, which you're going to have turnover. You're going to have new faces. You'll have some old faces. But one of the things that the article pointed out was that the Red Sox no longer have those star players outside of a Rafael Devers. I mean, you've got some veteran guys in there for sure. You've got some World Series pedigree. You've got some players that definitely could do the job. But do you think that the Red Sox need that face recognition outside of a Rafael Devers? Do they need a Mookie Betts? Do they need a JD Martinez? Do they need like tier 1 players? Or do you think their current staff, who I personally think are got some 2013 kind of vibes going on, that I really think this team is a lot better than people give them credit for? Just overall, I think they made some improvements with their bullpen they needed. We have a true closer for the first time in 3+ seasons. JT, even though he took a 90-mile-an-hour fastball off the face, I think he's going to do really good defensively as well as hitting. But do you think that they need that type of face recognition or name recognition to satisfy the hunger of the Boston Red Sox fan base?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of name recognition, there is a lot of name recognition. It just would have been, an all-star team 5-6 years ago, right? I mean, Kluber, Sale, Paxton, those were, Sale and Kluber were battling for Cy Youngs pretty much every year for a while. Paxton, I think, obviously injuries have kind of curtailed a lot of his career, but he's the guy that when healthy is one of the better pitchers in baseball, probably underrated, pitched most of his career in Seattle. I know he with the Yankees there at the end, pitched well. Jansen, Kluber, Justin Turner. I mean, these are guys who are pretty big name players. They've been in big markets. They've been in the playoffs. They're at the end of their career. So I think that takes away from the name value a little bit. You really have only one in your prime star endeavors. I think, it was telling to me that the top 100 that MLB did, MLB Network did the top 100 players in baseball, and Devers was the only one on the Red Sox that ranked in there. I think it's less about name recognition and more about, present day and present value talent. I think it's as I said 6 years ago, a lot of these guys were in their primes, right? Sale, Kluber, Jansen. Not that Jansen really got downhill at all, but a lot of these guys, they're in their late 30s. So there are some comps to that 2013 team where you had, Victorino was known from another organization. Mike Napoli was known from a couple other organizations. Ryan Dempster was a few different places. You think of him. These aren't guys that you ever think of as, I guess we do, but people probably think of Shane Victorino as a Philly and Ryan Dempster as a Cub and Napoli, maybe as a Ranger. So these are guys that I think it fits that mold a little bit. If you are, let's say, an autograph collector going to Fenway, there's a lot of big names on this team that, you're going to look back and say, oh, these guys had really good careers. They're not in the primes of those careers right now, but they do have some names. I think that helps fill the leadership void, right? There are guys who have, in their mind, been there, done that. I think that's kind of an interesting way to look at it too.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. Also, I think maybe that they're hoping Trevor Story can become that kind of second guy, or Yoshida could become that second guy. Obviously, Story has his health battles, and it's still a question of if he'll even play in 23. And Yoshida's never played in the big league, so they're both big question marks there. But they both seemingly would have the potential to be those big name players, and Story has before.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. I think both of them are. And, you have to look at it too of who's making the most money on the team, right? Obviously, it's Rafi after this year going forward, but there's a lot of guys making a lot of money. Trevor Story's deal is 140 million. Yoshida's 90. Sales, 145. Jansen's making 16 a year. Turner's making 15. I mean, it's guys that, are, theoretically guys that are great, had great careers, great track records. It's just, weird that they've all kind of converged in this moment in time on this team. And, that Yoshida, I think is, such an important piece and an interesting piece for this team because it's just a guy that, Heimblum really hitched his wagon to, right? And Heimblum's legacy is, I don't want to say it's dependent on one player or 1 year, but if it is, it's Yoshida, right? I mean, this is a guy that he went out and stuck his neck out on the line to try to sign this guy and was aggressive in the bidding for him and signed him with 24 hours after he was posted. If he has a horrible year and the skills don't translate and all that stuff, and that's going to be a huge indictment on Heim. So I think this is a guy that's super important to the Red Sox. I think fans need to be patient with him, especially earlier in the year, because there's a lot that's going to happen between now and opening day for Yoshida. He's playing in the tournament. He's across the world, back and forth flights and all that type of stuff. And the rule changes obviously are something for everybody. He's going to be playing in the WBC. He's not going to have that much time to, get to know the rule changes by the end. So I would give him a break. I'm saying if he has, a sloppy April or, it trickles into May. I know we don't afford patience in Boston usually, but this guy's going through a huge transition. That being said, he needs to be good early because the Red Sox need to be good early for fans to be interested. And he's a massive part of what they're trying to accomplish.
Chris, I want to step off the field for a second and up into the booth. I've been a Red Sox fan for as long as I remember. I grew up in Boston. Unfortunately, I don't live there anymore. But my outsource now is Nesson. Watching the games on Nesson. Taylor will say the same thing. He loves turning on Nesson. We've been spoiled for decades with great personalities up in the booth, with obviously Red Dog, rest in peace, Eckersley. It just didn't seem right that he was walking away these last couple of years. I didn't think he was that old to walk away. He seemed like he loved it so much. I'm going to miss his vocabulary. Where do you see the Nesson booth? Because the booth and the personalities in there really, they work directly as much with the fans as the players that are on the field. Where do you see that Nesson booth playing out this year?
It's a great question. I always say that I am among the least qualified people in America to answer this question because I'm at the game, so I really don't watch the broadcast. And so, like any Eckersley line or some of those classic things, like I saw from Twitter and then I had to look up a clip because I obviously, was there. And Eckersley, I interviewed him for my podcast the last week of his time there, and I was thinking to myself, God, this guy is, he's got 40 years older than me, but in much better shape than me, and feels like he's 35 instead of 67, 68, whatever he is. What I can tell you from what I know is that the days of Nesson or really any type of regional network like that, being able to get guys who will do 120 games or be on the call for that many and do the grind again, I think that's over. Jerry Remy is willing to do a huge amount of games, but just there's guys that don't want to be away from their families and don't want to do the 162 with all the travel. And, it's comfortable travel, right? They're in 5-star hotels and on charters and all that stuff, but it's still a lot. And so that's why you're seeing, more and more places like Nesson is this year. They're going to a 4 or 5 man rotation where, they want Youkilis. They think Youkilis is good, but he's only willing to do 80 games because he wants to work at his brewery in California and be home in Cincinnati and has, the family and hang out with his brother-in-law, Tom Brady, and all that stuff. So I think that we're going to see kind of that rotation more and more. Middlebrooks is kind of a rising star. He's going to do probably 30, 40 games. You're going to see Millar in there and Lou Merlone and Tim Wakefield and these types of guys. It's going to be, that's, I think, how it's going to be for years to come because you're not going to have that, guy like Jerry Remy who's willing to do 162. I think we're seeing that across baseball. Yes Network with the Yankees, David Cohn doing more Sunday night stuff. He's not in the booth every day. They're trying out all these different guys. And, that's just how it is. So I don't know if it keeps things interesting on a nightly basis for people watching at home or if it's, tough to try to, not get into a rhythm because you're seeing different people. I mean, last year, right, they had, Maserati and Euclid and all these different people. So that's just, I think, the way it is, because the guys who are retired, they made so much money in their career. They're not going to be attracted by the paycheck if NESN gives to be away from home for half the year.
If I can kind of play off of what you were talking about here, Chris, that I watch an inordinate amount of NESN here in my house. In fact, that's the only channel that's on my in my office 24/7. I literally leave it on. But I got spoiled to Donnie O, I got spoiled to Rim Dog, I got spoiled to Eck, and then OB, and kind of from there. So last year they had Tony Maz on, and unfortunately, I think he just kind of struggled in that platform. It didn't work out very well for him. It was the last year for Eck. We all kind of knew that was coming to a crescendo. But so far, the spring training, and I've watched probably 6 of the 10 games that they've done so far, the ones that have been televised, and even listened to one with Tony C. My question to you is, of the broadcasters that they look like they're going to use, you've got Lou Merloni, you've got Middlebrooks, you've got Mike Monaco, I believe is how you pronounce his name, and of course you're going to have OB as the staple. Do you think that is a good fit for the NESN viewers? And is there a trio that you would like to see do it that maybe not be apparent to us and apparent to NESN?
There's I think that Middlebrooks is really good on TV. I think he's got a very bright future in the industry, and he has a coach and his wife and Jenny Dell, who obviously was with NESN and knows how to do it. So I know he wants opportunities. He lives in Florida, has 2 young kids, so I think that's part of the challenge, which, like with all these guys. I think Euclid and Middlebrooks are kind of the 2 guys they see being the main guys for color for a while. I know people love Mike Monaco. Dave O'Brien's going to do as many of the 162 as he can, but Monaco's a very capable fill-in. And for me, it's interesting. I as I said, I don't really watch that many games. I hear Monaco and OB and all these commentators and stuff much more watching college hoops, because I'm a diehard North Carolina fan, and so I watch all their games, and that's when I get the exposure to those guys. And they call ACC games well, so that's about what I know on it.
Do you just do only home games? Do you get to go on the road at all?
Yeah, we do. At MassLive, we do every, Chris and I, one of us is at every home game or more, or both of us are there, and then we split the road about 50-50. So my expectations, I'm going to do probably 35 road games this year, which is our norm.
Hopefully see you in Milwaukee. We'll be there for the Milwaukee games.
I'll be there. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
I need to see it in the press box at the Trop.
my serious question of the night, because I'm not very serious at all, is how many ballparks have you been to, and which one has the best ice cream?
Yeah, I Fenway, the soft serve machine is the only good part of the media cafeteria, so that's why it's such a staple for me.
So you can't get past the hoodie cups.
No. As I've said, though, I gotta, last year was for bulking, 2023 for cutting. So maybe some more greens, some more salads, and a little less soft serve. Also, ballpark question, I think 24. I'm down to 1 American League ballpark in Texas that I haven't been to. And that's not just because it's new. I'd never been to the old one either. Chris Smith snagging all those Texas trips for some reason. And then I've yet to be in Milwaukee, which I will be in April, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, San Francisco, and Arizona. So I think those are my 6 left. I think it's 24 out of 30. And, I don't know about ice cream. I think my favorite one outside of Fenway, I always say this, and people, think it's kind of a weird choice because it's not the one you always hear, but Denver, Coors Field is unbelievable. It's a great place to see a game.
Yeah, well, Milwaukee's not a good place to be on a diet, let me tell you that.
I have plenty of experience not being on a diet. We're good.
When you if you go to the new Globe Life Field in Arlington, Chris, shoot me a DM. I'll meet you up there, but it would only be to meet you to watch a game, because outside of that, I have no desire to go to Arlington, Texas anytime soon.
I don't know. We haven't planned that far in advance of the schedule yet, but I'd like to. I want to cross up all 30.
Gotcha. I think everyone would. I think that's the thing. Our group who said we were trying to figure out who's gone to which ballparks, and we're already kind of trying to think into the future of, okay, we got to figure out a way to get everyone, because we all live. None of us live near each other except for Mr. Brown and Jeremy, who's not here with us tonight. Because I'm in Florida, Mr. Taylor's in Texas, and Mr. Brown and Jeremy are both in Illinois.
Yeah,
So
I got to see Mo Vaughn hit a double-decker home run in the old Yankee Stadium. So
Yeah. One thing I do want to ask is, I'm going to bring this up now. We normally do it as our closing segment, but I do really want to get to it because Mr. Brown brought up the ice cream question. We have our closing segment. This isn't going to be our closing segment this time, though. We call it Stats and Shats because the guys that nickname me Stats, and I come up with a random stat or fact, and the guys have to guess it. So your things with ice cream. So I came up with one specifically tailored to you. If you go to all 81 home games at Fenway Park and you eat one scoop of ice cream at every single home game, how many pounds of ice cream would you eat throughout the season?
That's a question I don't want to answer. That's a question I don't even want to think about. And it's a question that would horrify both my parents, who are loyal followers on Twitter and hate every single soft serve I have. So, we're gonna make sure they don't hear this. If you have the answer, I don't want to hear it.
I'll record it after and I'll put it in.
Good. Yeah, that is terrifying.
Or I'll put it on the screen. Well, so people are watching will be able to see it, but yeah, I won't say it. It is a lot. I was shocked when I saw it.
Yeah, well, we're gonna do the salad one in a year from now.
Hey, when you come back on in a year and you're eating salad every game, taking pictures of your salad every game, I might have to do that one.
Yeah.
If I may ask, I'd like to ask you this question myself, Chris. I sent it to Derek earlier to ask you, but I'm really curious. I monitor Twitter quite a bit throughout the course of the day because I'm semi-retired. But my question to you is, and I'll wrap this up because I know you got to go. But in short, do you think Bloom has done a good job in the short time that he's been there in Boston? And do you think this is literally his make or break season?
I said it on the space the other night that I did, and I believe it. I think it's probably too early for him to have a make or break season because they asked him to come in here and be a guy with a focus on the long term. But with the way the owners think and the way this city is, it's hard to imagine that they're going to be okay with 3 last place finishes in 4 years if that's the case. And in that vein, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to fire him at the end of a bad year. So I don't think it's fair because they asked him to come in and institute a long-term plan. But this is Boston, and this is kind of how it goes. And we've seen them make rasher decisions in the past.
Gotcha. Well, Chris, I don't want to take up any more of your time. You have been very gracious with us tonight. We really appreciate the answers that you gave us. It'll give us a lot to think about, to talk about on our upcoming podcast. But we'll kind of bring this to a crescendo because we know you got to get going. Is there anything that you want to plug specifically or talk about before you wrap it up for the night with us, my man?
I just appreciate you guys having me and keep up the good work. I see all you guys, very active on Twitter and love all the stuff you bring because that's why we're all in this anyway, is for passionate fans. So I appreciate it, guys.
Chris, I just have one favor. If you talk to any of the Fenway group, just ask him if David Ortiz is going to get a statue. He deserves one right there by Teddy Ball game.
I'm sure he will. But next time John Henry talks to me, will be the first remember. So.
All right, my man. Well, we'll wrap this up on behalf of Derek Stats McGuire, on behalf of Mr. Jeffrey Brown, on behalf of Mr. Jeremy, the overweight underdog. I am Robert fucking Taylor. This is the podcast that had Mr. Chris Cotillo. Sir, thank you very much. This has been Off the Monster. Everybody have a blessed night and go Red Sox.
This is us in post-production. Mr. Taylor and Mr. Brown are still with us. I just told them it, but if they want us to add to it, they can. Amount of ice cream for 81 home games. 1 scoop of ice cream is approximately 1/4 of a pound. It is 20.25 pounds. So
I have questions. What is 1 scoop? Is it like a scoop? Like
it's 1/4 of a pound
that you have
it's
in
like
your drawer.
The general scoop,
general
scoop that like of 1 scoop of ice cream,
like a scooper, like that you have in your utensil drawer.
Well, it depends on the scoopers. I see some of the scoopers are like super duper small.
That's what I'm saying.
A regular
teaspoon.
Like if you get a scoop of ice cream from somewhere where they just take 1 scoop and.
For those that are from Boston, we're not there anymore. When they used to have Brigham's and Friendlies everywhere, big scoop ice cream.
That might be a little bit more than 1/4 of
over 20 pounds of ice cream.
Yes, 20.25 pounds. And if you did it for all 162 games, you just double that. You got 40.5 pounds.
But in the heat of Boston during the summer, you're going to sweat that off.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
Well, I would hope so. That's a lot of ice cream. I
And
used to eat ice cream a lot, not anymore.
Mr. Taylor, when you're up in Boston, did you get to get a hoodie cup? There's
Uh,
Hood Milk used to have a factory in Charlestown, and they used
mhm.
to run the mill of dairy products up there. And they're like ice cream cups, like vanilla or chocolate you see in the store, but hoodie cups were the big thing in Boston. I don't know if I imagine they still are at Star Market,
Um,
Market Basket.
we 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 were kind of limited to where we went with all the kiddos. We got a ton of ice cream while we were at Fenway, but it came obviously in the little souvenir cups. I don't know if that's Hood or not. I've seen Hood. I've got several pieces of memorabilia in my office where Hood was a sponsor, but I could never personally say that I've actually had it, and I don't know if that's what they serve at the regular stands there at Fenway. But
Well,
I'm definitely gonna have to try
nothing
something.
beats a Fenway Frank.
No,
Dude,
Sitting in
let me
that
tell you
boiled
what,
water. I
man.
don't care how long that's sitting in boiled water for.
the only thing they need is they need the hot dog buns you can grill.
They need to
Let me
put
tell
the
you what.
Mystic River water in the water and just boil the Fenway Franks in there, and everybody would probably die though. So that'd
I'm
be a
trying
bad
to.
outcome.
I have reached out to Cahill Franks. They're the ones that do the Fenway Franks to see if I can get them shipped to our local grocery store because I want them fucking hot dogs.
There's KM hot dogs at Publix where I live. So if you have a Publix near you, maybe you want to check that.
No, I think I mentioned this to you guys the other. I think it was the other day that our big grocery chain is called HEB. It's. I'm telling y'all, fucking Google it. It's insane. Type in HEB Texas. It's insane what these fucking dudes do with a grocery store here. It's. I think I was telling Brown. It's like a Walmart super center
They
with.
probably have 20.25 pounds of ice cream there too.
Yeah, they have
Oh,
stores
dude.
like that out here. It's called Woodman's. It's massive. It's just a grocery store, and it's got a liquor store that's kind of attached to it in its own little store. But it's to me, I can't go in there because my social anxiety gets the best of me. I'm like, there's just too much. You know,
Oh, it's insane. It's
I
insane.
I always when I go to a grocery store, have you ever seen the movie with Jeremy Renner? He's the explosive ordnance division,
The Hurt Locker.
the Hurt Locker. The
Mhm.
scene that spoke to me the most in that movie, just because I spent a lot of the years overseas, is when he comes back and goes down the cereal aisle and there's just hundreds of boxes of cereal. The reason he's sitting there and he's just dumbfounded and doesn't know what to pick, because he just came back from a third world country with like, you're just eating MREs and you have nothing to choose from, and you're coming back and you're looking at this wall of food and you're like, man, we are so spoiled.
Breaking
Go ahead,
news!
Derek.
Breaking news! The Marlins have agreed to a non-roster invite deal with Yuli Gurriel.
Oh wow.
So yes, Yuli Gurriel on a minor league deal to the Marlins. All right, this is officially going to wrap up OTM now. As we wanted to leave the answer for the question for the ice cream stats and chats. So make sure. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check out our link in the description. Chris Cotillo, he was great joining. Check out his Twitter at Chris Cotillo. He also does work for MassLive, so check them out too. For Mr. Brown, for Mr.
I feel
Taylor.
like we need to get a plug or some pay from Lyft after that one.
for Jeremy, he's not here, and for Chris, thanks for joining us. My name is Derek. Thanks for tuning in off the Monstah, and we'll see you next time.